Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another Beyond All Reason analysis. I'm your host, Zateo, and today we're going to be going over a review from Ayin and Pro Randy playing a 1v1 on Comet Catcher. Now, this one I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to try to do it won't be a side-by-side view, but I'll be going between the two views and pointing out the differences and things that each player is doing really well or, mistakes or whatever, and just try to point out all the things. Um, I would be doing a like side-by-side comparison with like a split screen if I could, but unfortunately my video or my computer doesn't allow me to edit videos for some reason. It just comes up with all these errors saying I don't have enough hard drive space or something. I don't know. It's goofy. Um, Hopefully this will suffice. Um, I will also note that this is CCR. This is Comet Catcher Remake, and it's played a little bit differently than other matches. Uh, but it's a really good map for just learning the basics because a lot of the time the game like basically stays on, um, things like blitzes and sizers, medium tanks. Like there isn't a lot of like artillery play. There isn't a lot of whistling or anything like that. It's just like running around with tanks. And so strategy and tactics is really good. And of course, mastering your basics and getting all your stuff set up and ducks in a row is of course very good and it's just a good map for practicing all that stuff because it tends to stay pretty basic. Anyways, let's get into it. Um, so starting out here, I want to point out and mention the differences because Ayin's starting here with a solar and a turret. And in order to get the turret, you want to build that solar so you don't stall. So he's doing it correctly, but this, and I should point out really quick first, he's doing it this way so that he can grab this third mech and prioritize his commander defending and building in this location instead of having to worry about these mechs falling to something like that, to something like scouts early on, which is very, very common. So a reasonable defense here, but the turret's going to push him back economically. So he's walking to that third mech now. Randy on the other side now. This map is rotationally symmetric for the most part. Decided to skip the solar, skip the tower, and so he has a bit more metal than Ayin does at this point. Or actually, he doesn't because he's already built this other stuff while Ayin was still walking. Um, but yeah, it's gonna basically get his lab sooner, whereas Ayin hasn't even started his lab yet. It just started. Randy's is about 50%, 60% done, and just right away queuing up some more solar for the later term. Very important to add on that solar so you don't stall on energy and all that stuff. Um, and so yeah, the lab from Ayin is about to finish. About to finish. All right, so let's look at Randy. He's already got his first scout out. Already got another solar, and that's because of the tower. All because of one tower. But yeah, now Ayin is catching up. We're not catching up, but has a third solar at least. Randy has a fourth. Randy already getting out some scouts. Two pretty far forward. Looks like Ayin's decided to go with three initially, while Randy has gone for two plus the constructor. Constructor building a radar very early, very important, and building a constructor of his own. Now, note this is when, note the timing, like about 2 minutes is when Randy gets his scouts here. And usually I don't like to point out exact timings like in bar because it can adjust so much. Of course, that depends on the map and the size of the map, the terrain of the map, if there's going to be scouts or not, depending on the terrain and things like that. But yeah, 2 minutes is when you need to start worrying about scouts getting here on this map. And what was I going to say? And so this is kind of when you need to have your tower or start having your guys here. So one of the things that Ayin can do to still have a tower here, but get the stuff at a more reasonable time, is to skip the tower for now and then walk back to get it. I would say that's not ideal either, though, because you still have to walk back, and that's delays, boosting out some solar or boosting out stuff from your lab. So not ideal to do that either. So what you actually want to do is build scouts to defend with. You have your scouts to run around, look for damage, do some scouting, of course, and then you have some home defenders, and that's actually exactly what Randy's doing here, is building some rovers for defense. Now you can do Incisor or Blitz for defense, but the thing is they're slower, and a player that has the APM to spend will be able to run around those Incisors and Blitzes with their scouts. Now for now, Randy's just kind of holding on, keeping them here to see when Ayin expands, and grabbing his own expansion at the same time. And note the positioning of these scouts. They're back here to defend against rovers and ticks and stuff that can potentially get back here. And just adding on some more things like solar collectors, boosting the lab with another constructor, and has his commander out doing stuff, building defenses and stuff. Now this position is a bit further away, harder for scouts to defend here and defend back here. So he's building a tower there, so that's a very reasonable thing to do. And already at this point, he's ahead on metal income, 13 to 8. So Ayin's already a bit behind, and he has to worry about this tick that's doing damage. Now I will note here that the tick, or I'm sorry, not the tick, it's a rover. Either way it's a scout, but the commander's actually in range to attack this rover. The reason why it's not is because this metal extractor blocks the attack. So this rover is just doing damage, just being annoying, and wasting Ayin's time repairing it. And he saw Ayin move, so he gets right out of there, and the scout's alive. So that's just like the level of APM, with Randy here. Randy, of course, being a well-known, player, has played things like 0K and Balanced Annihilation and Total Annihilation extensively, so knows the game very well. Lots of experience from this guy. And so yeah, Ayin's just expanding. He has some incisors to protect the expansion as it goes up. But I will note as well that Ayin is placing towers every so often. And whoops. It's kind of hard to see because it's CCR and it's kind of grainy texture, but there's a tower here, there's a tower here, there's a tower here, and this is in between all these mexes, and there's a radar here as well. But each of those is going to set his expansion behind and put him behind on metal income, essentially. Whereas Randy, he's placing towers as well, so it's not like it's a bad thing to do or anything like that, but just to make notes that it will set you back. Oh, okay, no, this isn't the time. Okay, so he loses those. Well, actually, I'll point it out when he comes in with the next ones, because this is something I think is very important to point out. But yeah, Randy's just moving his commander forward, grabbing mexes, taking a path towards center. Ayin doing the same thing, taking a path towards center. And I also want to note, actually, he hasn't started to expand elsewhere yet. So I'll talk about that when that happens. Whoops. Didn't mean to pause there. Let's just clear that. Need to set up a hotkey for this clear marker. Be so much more convenient. Okay, so I believe it's here. Yeah. Okay, so note that the tower is facing north. So the rover here takes one bit of damage. The tower had to turn around to attack this rover. It got one shot off, but because it had to turn around, it did not have enough time to kill this rover before it got into a position where it's between, the rover's right up next to the mechs, and the tower can't actually fire on it because it's just, the mechs is blocking it. So the rover here is able to get this mechs for free, essentially. And now the tower is facing south. This other rover comes in here, and now Ayin sees it, he's responding, and same thing happens. And the first two that came in here died because Randy actually messed it up and attacked in the wrong order, and the tower picked off both rovers. But yeah, in this case, Ayin is going to lose both mexes there. for the cost of a rover. So kind of a big deal there. So the way you want to deal with that, and this is something that I haven't heard before. It's something I just thought of actually just today. But what you could do is rotate the tower's head ahead of time if you see it coming. If you see a rover coming in or a tick or whatever it is, tell it to attack ground so that it faces a direction near that. You don't want to place it, you don't want to hit like between the mechs and the tower because the tower will just probably not do anything. But if you do it off to the side a little bit and reposition it so that it's facing the correct direction of the attack, it should be able to pick off that rover before it kills the mechs. So now this is really annoying. Ayin has to come up here and, rebuild the mechs. And Ayin here is adding on some solar to increase his energy production as his metal goes up. Very important thing to do. Now, I will note how fast these expansions are. So the more constructors you have going out to grab mechs, it's kind of like setting you up better for the later term of just, then you'll have more metal. But the thing is, as you do that, you need to add on more and more solar. And if you're doing 2 at a time, you're going to need to add on more, that much more solar. So, it's kind of a quite the expense because now you're paying for the solars, you're paying for the mechs, you're paying for the constructors, and all this time, all this money and time, you're not spending on units. So it's, just to make notes that, you can expand like crazy, but then you won't have very many units because now you need to match it with, you need the constructions to build it, you need the solar to match it, and you need the build power to utilize all that extra metal. So it's just a lot of units that don't, it's not going to give you very many units very early on. So, sometimes I see people expand like crazy, sometimes I don't. In this case, Randy is not expanding too hard, but is ahead nevertheless, playing a rather safe game here. Putting up a couple towers and radar. Very importantly, he has radar all over the place. So he has this radar to spot all the way up on the north section. He has this radar here for the middle section. And he's sending another constructor down here to put a radar for this bottom section. Very important. Very, very important. In fact, this is something I want to talk about a little bit too, is oftentimes I kind of see players doing a like the way that they expand is they'll send their commander forward, they'll send a constructor up here to grab these mechs and start working along this way, and they'll send their like a second expansion set like down here. And that's pretty typical. That's actually what I see most of the time, especially before it's like top tier players. What I would recommend, and this is just me talking, and I'm actually seeing a little bit in this game, is, like Randy here is, has moved the commander forward, is moving a constructor up this way, and another constructor up this way. Now, this third one, or this third line, isn't necessarily what I would recommend. I mean, it's actually probably better than what I would recommend. What I tell people, or what I think is good anyway, this is just me talking, is, of course, send the commander forward. You send one constructor up here, build a radar, towers and stuff going upward to, help zone this out. And then your second one, when you send it out this way. Do the same thing on the bottom, set up a radar somewhere in here, set up some towers going down, and have your units coming out centrally. And with that, the radar will help you, see the raids coming, and you can send units up there to deal with it. You can send exactly how many you want to send, type of thing. And same thing with the south. You just send as many as you need because you have that radar coverage. You see exactly how many enemies are coming and how fast they're moving, so you know what units they are. Like if they're medium tanks, the dots will move slower. If they're, incisors or blitzes, then the dots will move faster. And if they're scouts, they'll move really fast, right? So you can get a bit of a tell from that. But yeah, Randy, I think in this game he just sets a radar here and a mechs. I don't know if he intended to grab all these mechs down here with that's this constructor, but he does go idle with it for a while. Um, so I believe that's just a mistake. Um, so I don't really know if he meant to leave this bottom section pretty bare pretty early on, but that's what he ends up doing. The only thing I can think of is if it's on purpose, defending this corner is much easier than defending this half, So early on, just taking these safely, defending it really well, instead of trying to go all gung-ho and take all of it. So here, we see Ayin running in there with a bunch of incisors. But the thing is, this radar's done. And Randy's able to respond very easily with all these blitzes. So now these incisors are like, oh shoot, there's a lot of blitzes here, I need to get out of here. And unfortunately, Ayin's going to lose these tanks here. And now Randy has the opportunity, since they're already moving in this direction, he can just keep coming this way, knock out a bunch of expansions. And this is enough blitzes to do that. So you got to be really careful with that. At this point, Randy's already significantly ahead, and has more units out. Just because of small differences in the beginning, like the turrets and, Ayin losing those mexes and things like that. And the fact that Ayin's producing all these, extra guard towers. Yeah, here's that idle Khan. So Randy has a Khan coming up here grabbing all these mexes, another Khan out here to defend it in this location. And then has that raiding party up at the top. And then notes the raiding party that's going this way, and then he also has all these units going towards the bottom. So this is, supposed to tax your opponent. If your opponent, especially if they're behind and struggling to make enough units, they're going to send everything to stop this, because they need to, right? They need to, because they don't have enough to split forces. So everything has to go up here, so that allows Randy to come down to the bottom here and do some damage to the bottom part. Yeah, so that's a pretty normal thing to see on this map. And yeah, it's really annoying for Ayin to have to deal with this. And this really comes down to that early game. Randy skipped the towers by these mexes, defended with scouts instead, and had some pressure from his own scouts. Just makes it annoying for Ayin to deal with. And if Ayin's trying to defend it with incisors, well, the scouts can still do stuff because they're that much faster. And then yeah, just like grabbing these two mexes pretty quickly allows him to. Well, I mean, first of all, you need to build up enough solar before that, and then as you grab these mexes, adding on these extra solar to boost you forward, with economy, because otherwise you'll start stalling on energy a bit. If you have the build power to use your metal that you're getting with those extra two mexes. But yeah, very early lead because of that, because of the lack of towers, because he got those solars faster, and because he set this up faster. And I should have looked to see what Ayin's scouts ended up doing. I kind of missed it, to be honest. Because there was just so much I wanted to talk about with Randy's scouts. And here, I'll note, now this is kind of important too, because oftentimes I see people, they do a raid and they just kind of send them in, and then they send like another group in this way. And then that's fine. If that's where your APM stops, that's fine. But if you have extra APM to spare and you're able to check up on your raids, highly recommends that if you, encounter a big enough force that's going to defend it and you're basically going to lose these guys for nothing. In this case, Randy could potentially pick off this one incisor, doing that kind of maneuver, but would probably lose all three to all the towers that are around and the defending incisors. So instead of suiciding and basically gifting those wrecks, he's deciding, okay, I did some damage. If I can save any of these blitzes, it's worth it. So instead of attacking, he's actually going around this way, back out, and then he can save some of those blitzes. Also, if he ends up losing them, they're further away from his opponent. Like if he just goes in, maybe he loses one like here and one here, one down here, let's say. Those wrecks are not too hard for Ayin to go reclaim. Now, if he goes up here and around and loses them somewhere along this section, well, now all of a sudden, in order for Ayin to reclaim it, he has to send a builder all the way out here to reclaim it. It's more annoying to reclaim it. So it's like even if they die there, they're dying further away from your opponents, making it harder for them to get the reclaim. Here, let's see. Huh. Okay, well, this is an interesting choice here. He's deciding to, rally his guys. They move this way and then move up north. Yeah, I mean, I guess just maybe he realized that there aren't as many mechs down here, and knowing that it's kind of hard to, if you do damage in the base, well, you do damage in the base, but then you're leaving all those wrecks there, right? So maybe instead of deciding to do that, playing a little bit safer, doing like a circle around, and just going in this way and potentially out again and saving those, some blitzes. So just like trying to find free damage, I think is what he's trying to do, or whatnot. With this kind of maneuver. Little does he know that Ayin basically has nothing here. Sees all the incisors here and just decides to back out. Yeah. Yeah, so up here at the top, Ayin has responded, killed off a couple more blitzes, or maybe just one of them at that point. I don't know if the other one was already there, because I thought it was only 3 blitzes that were running around at that point. But either way, able to save 2 blitzes. And then just this here, yeah, I mean, so actually, yeah, I think this is a good idea, just because he knows that his opponent's behind because of the loss of mexes here, the loss of these mexes earlier on, and the fact that Randy hasn't, taken a ton of damage, and he knows that his opponent does not have these. So essentially, taking the opportunity, knowing that his opponent is out of position, having some units up here and having units down here to defend, he's taking the opportunity to dismantle some of the frontal stuff by attacking this location. Take it out while it's still weak before there's reinforcements in that area. Notes he's not going too deep. He's just kind of running in, doing some damage, coming out. Suiciding them in there just means more wrecks, and it doesn't really help him. So it's good to have those units alive for later, right? Try to maintain the units advantage. Even keeping a couple of blitzes around here to see what they can find. And at this point, he's been taxing Ayin quite a bit, and Ayin's a little bit slow to respond because of the APM intensity. So little things like that. It's like even if those 2 blitzes die, it's not like a huge investment, but you potentially can find another mex or a constructor or whatever. Killing off a constructor is actually a bigger deal than killing off a mex on CCR, especially because that one constructor can build all the mexes, whereas one mex is one mex. Nice little pullback from Ayin here. And just trying to do a raid down here. Unfortunately, this radar sees him pretty easily. But that does force his opponent to respond. Now, one of the things that you could do, and this might not even be a good idea in this situation, but instead of going full frontal, full force in here, you could just poke in here and maybe just assume that he has a radar. Not every player would, but a player of this caliber, maybe you want to assume that, and just like, send some units in, but then just pull right back out. And that way you maintain your units, you pull his guys out of position, and then you can maybe do something elsewhere, or you're just like keeping him busy so that he doesn't attack you. The only thing about that though is, if you do that, these guys that are defending this area will probably chase and probably try to do some damage of their own. So keep that in mind. Position units properly to deal with that type of thing. See lots of solars going on. Your build power is kind of lacking, and I think it's been lacking for a little while now, which is unfortunate. So it's just not enough constructors being pumped out here. What I like to do for this map in this particular kind of situation, I'll queue it up like this, like you have, but once in a while, and this is kind of hard to do, you kind of need the APM and stuff, but returning to this location, alt clicking a constructor or two here and there, especially when I start seeing my metal rise, and just adding on a couple of constructors. On a map like this, constructors, like adding constructors instead of construction turrets is fine, because you can use those constructors for other stuff. Like there's so many mechs to grab, right? So to me, adding on a few constructors, getting a construction turret, getting one earlier, whatever, is fine. But I think adding either a construction turret or constructors on sooner is of course, to spend your build power. I felt like I went in circles there, so let me say this again. So I like to go constructors personally in the early part, because those constructors can be useful later on, and all that build power from the constructors can build a nano pretty quickly, instead of building the nano really early and all that. Now, building a nano early is fine to do, especially like in something like an 8v8. I think that's a better choice in an 8v8, because you don't need all those constructors, because there's less mechs to go grab. There's less things you need to build in your base. So, the economy kind of grows slower, whereas here, it's sort of like it needs to grow a bit faster. You need that build power. So as you're grabbing more mechs, as you're getting more energy, you just need to add on that build power. Because this is already a sizable issue here. Now let's take a look at Randy's metal. Randy's spending pretty well. Yeah, and just defending. I mean, his metal's starting to rise a little bit as he reclaims a few things, I think. So he could probably even add on a little bit here too. But that's kind of the nature of CCR. It's like there's so many more resources than usual, so it's kind of it's hard to switch between CCR and other maps because of that. Note here, Randy has switched into medium tanks. So this is something that it's quite common that once you have yourself pretty well established, you get medium tanks instead of incisors, because they are, they can fight so much better than incisors can. But note that medium tanks are much slower, so they're going to have more of like a frontal impact. They're going to go more head on. And if they don't, then it's sort of like if they need to respond to something, it's a little bit harder for them to do so. So positioning becomes more important as things slow down. So note that he has these 5 blitzes here as kind of like a safety net. He has his commander up here, and he's also porking this side up. So to state that a little differently, he has his medium tanks down here, to defend against the raid and stuff. Maybe do a push down here. And this position is far away because it's the other side of the map, right? So knowing that his medium tanks can't get there to defend the location as easily, he's putting up pork here. And also notes he's putting up this wall of solar collectors. Solar collectors are actually a reasonable wall, because they're fatter. You don't have to place like a million, what are they called? Dragon's teeth. And when they die, they leave a wreck a lot of the time, which means now the enemy has to blow through the wreck in order to get through. So they're basically a living wall that provides energy for you, and then when it dies, it becomes like a regular wall where it's just like this thing that's obstructing you. So yeah, that's something that I see quite often from some of these players. Something I like to try to do is put up these walls like that. Also notice that Randy's not building these solar collectors in a big brick Like a lot of people, would probably put up, something like this for solar. Putting walls like this, I mean, putting solars like this means that they're now walls. And if they're walls, you can prevent, you can force your opponent to maneuver in certain ways and makes it easier to defend your base, essentially. It just makes it harder to like raid and like keep running through your base. Alright, so Randy here is setting up for another attack. Now at this point, Ayin, sorry, at this point, Ayin, you have to be very careful with your commander, because if this wasn't medium tanks, then it's going to be a hell of a lot of blitzes. And either way, it's kind of like becoming enough to take out your commander pretty easily. And so, I'd say like even starting at like 8 or 9 minutes, you want to check in with your commander, make sure that there's enough towers or units around him to defend it. Because this could be kind of dangerous. Now, obviously, medium tanks are pretty prone to getting degunned. So, in this particular case, it might be okay, type of thing. And you just, yeah, you kind of have to get out of there. But yeah, Randy could potentially just like stay on the outskirts of your commander and pick it off, type of thing. So careful, careful, careful. Now he's got a second group of tanks moving around. Bit of damage here. So he basically, moved tanks down here. He's threatening your commander. You have to respond to protect your commander, which pulls you out of position from defending these. So now these are swinging up here, probably. Actually, they're just kind of going around this way. So now you got two forces to deal with. And this is kind of the issue with medium tanks, right? They're just kind of like this big, strong force that barrels through a location. And, light laser towers are not going to do too much against them. So they can just like run through and do stuff. Incisors, of course, and of course blitzes too, are quicker. So if you need to defend quickly, you need to build incisors and stuff, because you can't really chase stuff down with your own medium tanks, unless they stop like they are here. So it becomes difficult for the player that's behind to defend everything with medium tanks, because A, you just don't have enough, and B, you're kind of playing catch up no matter what, especially because you have not fixed your build power, and it's kind of becoming an issue here, which I would probably just chalk up to, being APM taxed. There's just too much to do, and you're not used to it, so it's just kind of scary, right? But yeah, so I feel like in this kind of position, while it's good to get medium tanks, you're never going to catch up to his medium tank count, unless he just like suicides them all in or something. So it's kind of rough. I mean, it's kind of rough no matter what, because of your economic situation with your full metal bar and just being behind outside of that. But I guess I just want to talk about, the differences between incisors and blitzes, and using them strategically. Like I was saying, medium tanks are slower, but they can barrel through locations, right? So you kind of want to not get medium tanks until you have a lot of economy to pump them out rather quickly. And that way you have enough medium tanks to be able to defend all the different stuff. Because otherwise, if you only have a small group of medium tanks, like it was early on, Randy was defending against a push and had medium tanks, defending down here. And I was talking about the pork defending at this top side because they're slow, right? So when a player goes medium tanks, you could try to match it with medium tanks, but in this case, you're also behind, so that's kind of rough. The other way to play it, and I just want to put this out there as a general idea, is you could play incisor still. It sounds kind of counterintuitive, because it's like, well, medium tanks just kind of beat incisors, so why would you do that? The idea being, you're not necessarily looking for, huge efficiency in terms of battle. You're looking for huge efficiency in terms of raiding. So if your economy is managed properly, incisors could be popping out pretty darn quickly here. And so what you could do is send incisors, this way, send them in this way, send them in, just send them like in all these different directions. And of course, this kind of play is going to be more APM intensive. But if you're able to find, locations that are, that you have enough incisors to like get through, you could potentially do a lot of damage. The only caveat to that is, and the thing is, if you do something like that, like, a lot of players will need to respond to that with their own medium tanks. And of course, you don't want to just lose your incisors for nothing. You want to, get some damage done. So you have to be very careful and micro all that properly. But, the idea is you move some incisors in, and if you meet resistance, you just turn out because you're faster. You can run. You you get to kind of choose the engagements a lot more than someone with slower units. So you can run until the odds are in your favor. So, if you meet resistance, say like over here, like it was before, you get your medium tanks out, and then they'll chase, and then you rally some more medium, or I'm sorry, some more incisors and stuff down here to help defend it, right? And so it's kind of like your choice. Um, so it can get dicey, especially when you're behind. Um, and the even harder thing about it is if they do push with medium tanks somewhere, um, and you got incisors running around the map elsewhere, well, now it's going to be hard to defend those positions. But the thing is, time is a little bit more on your side. You get to choose the battle and move stuff in the position. So while you have maybe some incisors trying to do damage down here, you can mount you can ready your defenses, right? Now in this case, it's kind of hard because these medium tanks are split up. And again, this has a lot to do with your economy just not being in good shape. But if it was, and you had a lot more incisors running around, you could have enough incisors to defend, and just like station them here, cut your losses here because it's going to be hard to catch up to these tanks, right? And just kind of move your incisors here, move them down that direction to engage these medium tanks and pick them off, right? And then you have, your rally or something like that moving up here, to kind of do the same thing with defenses up here, and maybe even like if you have time, depending on how fast you are, I guess, you could potentially set up some kind of static D here with your guys, and then just send like a sizable group of incisors down here as well. So now you're inflicting a bunch of damage. You're taking some damage of your own, but potentially doing a lot of damage down here. And then as this gets cleaned up, you can rally your forces up here and then do damage at the top. Now, of course, this is kind of a crazy, like hard. It's very involved. There's a lot of shit going on if you play that way, but and that's probably a very difficult way to play. But I guess I'm just saying that there are other options out there besides just like matching the medium tanks. Yeah, definitely a harder way to play. Anyways, that was my rant about that. I don't know. I just kind of want to see someone do it really successfully against a strong opponent. I've done it a couple times for some weaker opponents, but it's a different level of play, so it's kind of different. Um, yeah, so now medium tank's kind of getting in, and at this point, I think there's already been enough damage, that the game's been over, but now it's especially over. You got the medium tanks up here, you got the medium tanks that are in the base, and you even have a third group of medium tanks from the center. So Randy here just kind of pressing forward, knowing that his opponent's behind and taking advantage of that. So the game's, yep, actually the game just ended. All right, well, good time to resign for sure. And yeah, let's just look at the graphs really quick. Just to show the difference. This is metal used. And then yeah, Randy, yeah, of course early on they're pretty close. Randy spikes up and just grows out of proportion and doesn't grow quite as quickly, and that's partly because of losses and dealing with just all the shit going on. Metal produced, Randy takes somewhat of an early lead here at around 3 minutes, and that just keeps growing as well. So there's that. Um, but yeah, I guess just to reiterate some of the key points here. I think Ayin is behind because he built the tower over here. Built another tower. Why is my mouse going off screen? What the heck? Oh, it's probably because of this, I guess. Oh no, that's annoying. That's so annoying. Sorry about that. But yeah, so Ayin built the tower here, built another tower in base. Randy skipped both of those. I was able to get up some faster solar collectors. Came down here with this commander, expanded here rather quickly, got that nice benefit from the extractors. Built solar down here, and that's mainly because when you grab these metal extractors, you're going to need a little bit more energy to actually utilize them. And then decides to get a tower. And the tower is mainly because he was defending this whole section of his base with rovers. And if too many rovers come in at the same time from different directions, he can't defend everywhere with the few rovers that he had, so he gets a tower. Very reasonable thing to do in that kind of situation. Otherwise, he could have gotten some more rovers, but probably decided instead to prioritize some constructors and all that. And then, just expanding outward with this commander going forward. Whoops. This commander going forward. Aiden's commander goes forward as well, but loses those 2 mexes to that rover micro. And again, just to reiterate that, the way you do it is you attack from the direction that the turret is not facing. And that way the rover can actually get in there next to the mechs to kill it. Gets right next to the mechs so that the tower can't hit it because the mechs is in the way. And in order to defeat that, you need to kind of see it coming and rotate the turret around to face the proper direction beforehand, or respond with your own ticks or rovers or whatever you have. Incisors can work. Incisors and blitzes can work for that kind of defense, but the thing is, at this level of play, Randy's going to see that coming with his scouts and move the scouts out of position. He's just going to run around the rover, or I'm sorry, around the incisor, and deal a bunch of damage elsewhere instead. I've seen that many times. I've tried doing that many times against other players. It doesn't work out as well as you might think. But then also, very importantly, Randy moved his constructors out this way, grabbed these radars very early on, and then got this radar a bit later, so that he sees anything coming a long ways out. And that's raid that Ayin tried to do up here was just easily met with a bunch of blitzes. So there's radar's good. And on this map, it's a lot to cover, so you kind of need radar all over the place. And then the biggest thing to fix for sure is the build power. Having a full bar is not great, and so just you added on the energy. A lot of people they get messed up on this map with how much energy you actually need. But I think you actually did that pretty well. It's kind of hard to say without having the build power to utilize your resources. You might have needed a little bit more energy. I'm not 100% sure. It kind of just depends on how fast you're expanding and whatnot. But yeah, I think that's all the big stuff. Some of this stuff is kind of complex. It's kind of hard to put it into words, but I hope I did a good enough job explaining it. If anybody out there that's like super high OS 1v1 wants to tell me I make saying all the wrong things, go ahead, leave some comments, correct me. At least then I will know for next time, right? And if anybody else has any questions or anything, let me know. But yeah, hope you guys learned something. GG's. Thanks for watching.